The four women, dressed in false Israeli military uniforms, were paraded on a stage in Gaza City on Saturday morning before being handed over to the Red Cross. They were flanked by masked Hamas fighters in combat fatigues and wearing the green bandanas of the group. There was a show of defiance that will anger many in Israel, but a deliberate message that Hamas in Gaza is not totally defeated. At the Raim military base in Israel, their parents watched the transfer, finally realizing that their daughters were still alive. This video, released by Hamas, shows the hostages in the back of a car on their way to being released. They were given certificates and badges by the group and had to pose for photos near the waterfront. The four were then driven to the Gaza border by the Red Cross, handed over to the IDF, a thumbs up and a heart sign for the cameras. And then reunited with their waiting families after 15.5 months being held hostage.
It's been a very, very emotional day today, with tears all around, with people sitting on the edges of their seats, watching television, family members, friends surrounding the various locations, whether it's in the south or at the hospital, Beilinson Hospital. The images that are coming out from the joining their family members are very, very powerful, and it goes to show how the whole country has been holding its breath today.
Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa, Nahma Levy and Liri Olberg were all IDF surveillance officers, captured at the Nahal Oz base on the morning of October the 7th and bundled into jeeps at gunpoint and taken into Gaza. The four were airlifted to a hospital outside Tel Aviv, where they will now stay in the coming days for physical and mental support. On board one of the helicopters, a smiling Liri Olberg posed for this photo, the words, "I'm back," written on a sign.
We are meeting them after 477 days in Hamas captivity. This is an unimaginable reality. We, the medical teams in the healthcare system, stand ready to address any medical need that may arise.
In Gaza, Palestinians were waiting to finally cross back to the north of the Strip as part of the ceasefire deal. Israeli forces were supposed to leave the Netzarim corridor on day 7, but Benjamin Netanyahu said that that would not happen today because Hamas had violated the deal. Israel says the group should have released a civilian, Arbel Yehud. In a statement, Hamas said that she was still alive and would be freed next weekend. The second exchange in this ceasefire happened not without complication, but perhaps more smoothly and more quickly than last week. It will now be another long and tense 7 days before the next hostage-prisoner exchange.
In the midst of this frenzy, coaches carrying around 60 prisoners returned here to the West Bank to be greeted by a wall of emotion. Among the crowd, Safia, waiting for her son Ishmael. In Israel, convicted of attempted murder, but to her and most in this throng, saluted as a hero.
We're thanking God. This is our state of mind. Thanking God for this life. Thank God.
This a prayer of gratitude for her son's return.
It is noisy and it is chaotic, but here there is a sense of jubilation as well, because for many in this crowd, these coaches and the prisoners inside them represent a victory over Israel.
Again and again, we hear chants in support of Hamas. The released prisoners taken to a community centre for health checks. Some went on to hospital, but most emerged into the embrace of family, friends and well-wishers. This man is Ahmed Musa, released after 13 years behind bars. He claimed he'd often been beaten in prison right up until his final hours. He was overjoyed at freedom.
My message to all the Palestinian people, wherever they are, including in Gaza, West Bank and abroad, you have mastered the art of creating joy despite the hardship and the genocide we are dealing with. And to all the free people, I say this: prisoners in Israeli prison are dealing with the worst.
120 prisoners found guilty of the gravest crimes were expelled from Israeli territory. Just over half deported to Egypt, the rest sent into Gaza. Here on the West Bank, the sight of these men coming back from captivity seemed like a seminal moment for many. But the spectre of conflict goes on.
I think the future is going to be more sad for us. Because, you know what I mean, like everything will get bad from Israel occupation for us, I think, especially in West Bank.
These men were convicted by Israeli courts of some of the most serious crimes possible, yet now suddenly they're free. And that is the price Israel is paying for its hostages. Very different. The prisoners who arrived here in the West Bank were released hours and hours earlier than last weekend. But I think, just like last weekend, so much of this will be seen through the prisms of imagery. So firstly, of course, Israel has this incredibly potent image of these 4 young women who've been held in captivity and have now, through what Israel would say its diplomatic efforts, been brought back to their families through the pressure that has been exerted on Hamas through that military campaign. But then here in the West Bank, the imagery is completely different. It is those prisoners being greeted as returning heroes. And in Gaza, well, of course, the imagery there is about Hamas parading these hostages before trying to almost appear to take the upper hand in pushing them back towards Israel. Ultimately, each party will say they have come out of this better and strengthened.